Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Good, Frank. Good to see you, my friend.
Same here.
Having a good week?
Always.
Good, man.
Always.
I'm excited for today's episode.
Me too.
Yeah. Who are we talking about today, Frank?
I have no idea. No, okay. Louise Hay.
Yes.
Yeah.
An OG, a true
OG.
OG in the industry.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's kind of a surprise that it took us this long to talk about it, right?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, she's just played a huge impact, just on the New Thought movement. She's the owner of Hay House.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a big publisher for a lot of the different spiritual teachers. Different people we've covered on this show, and anybody who kind of talks about these topics.
Yeah, and we were talking about this earlier, but like not only that, like a lot of the obviously she's an author herself.
Yep.
I think the publication she started Hay House in 1984. Yeah.
Yep.
But a lot of the people that she had on, like Wayne Dyer was a huge one.
Yeah. That was one of her biggest because he got on like PBS and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but even Deepak Chopra, Dr. Deepak. Yeah,
so
so
we covered a couple weeks back.
Greg Braden had publications,
yeah.
And I'm sure like they use other publications too. But it seemed like her, like in the field of New Thought, she tied into because a lot of these earlier people were based off of science. So like Dr. Deepak Chopra came from the science world.
Well, the book I just got, Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins.
Yeah.
That was a Hay House published book.
There you go, yeah.
Yep, I saw it right when I opened it up. It said Hay House.
So she tied in, which wasn't tied in, I think, earlier. Or it might have been, but she really kind of put it in. Or the publication she did. Obviously, the authors themselves were the ones who are tying this stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're taking the understanding of science up till that moment in time and then put it into the spiritual realm where years ago it seemed to be separate. You always had seen like people in the science world, especially years ago, were like disassociated from religion, where the theology was, and now it's kind of coming
full
back.
circle.
Yeah, coming full circle. And so there's another way of explaining it. And for a lot of people, I like it too. I could do both sides of it, get into spiritual and just talk about that without the analogy of or the science, the language of science, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But I also get why the science is there because it has this backing, and through all the people we're covering, and kind of why we have this podcast, Perspective Shift here, is to show the correlation of everything and how it works. So there is a deeper meaning or a deeper understanding in everything that comes out, however people explain it, whether it's from the physicist or the spiritual leader, what have you. There's an essence that follows through history, even prior to the Bible when we had these great writings. What like Louise Hay talks about, it hasn't changed. The way she packaged it, the way she says it is different than, say, 5,000 years ago, but the essence has never changed. So if the essence has never changed, this is the point what we focus on.
Yeah.
And that's what we kind of understand. There's something real here. Now, how me and Mike express it is going to be different than somebody else, and that's okay because the more variety we have, the better the party.
Well, that's it. We're here to give you our perspective onto something, just to give you a different perspective out there.
Yeah.
Because that was what, my relationship with Frank. Even Frank, you gave me a different way to look at things that had been in front of my face my entire life, and it wasn't until I started to look at things from just a little bit different of a perspective that I realized how much I am participating in this experience, whether I'm saying I'm having a great time or whether I'm saying this experience sucks. My level of participation is everything.
Oh yeah, and also being aware of that. I think that's before. Like I said,
a lot of us are not aware of that. We think the world is happening to us.
Yeah. And I think when we were children, like I say this, like I heard somebody say this, so I'm going to steal it. But when I heard it, I was like, wow, because I've always heard the opposite, like age creates wisdom. But we weren't as wise as we were when we were 9. Yeah. All we're doing is categorizing all the information and peeling back what was all just blocking what we understood when we were young kids. So over the years, all of a sudden, the mud that got in our eye created the inability to see beyond the point in which where we were. So we got stuck in this rut. And then wisdom of age just came, it's like, hey, well, push the mud out of your eye and you get to see again. But you're actually going back to the place when you were a child. And all the information that we think we know intellectually was what was the blindfold in front of our eyes. That's what actually hurt us.
Yep.
You know, that's what, like, you know, a lot of people, like even Louise Hay, came from like a background. They didn't really have like maybe the high intellect, or like she wasn't a doctor and she came from this place, but yet her works and understanding are pretty profound.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and how she didn't let a platform.
Well, I think that's where we kind of went wrong as a society. Like with all like the last 20 years of like you got to be college educated to be something and all this stuff. We have confused wisdom with knowledge and intellect, and like the amount we consume and what we can regurgitate, and that intellect, that thinking mind, we've begun to celebrate and prioritize over wisdom. And wisdom does not come from the thinking mind.
No, it doesn't. But
wisdom is within every single one of us.
Yeah, it is.
We all have this ability to kind of tap into this quiet silence where when you're not forcing something, your body, yourself, your inner being, kind of serves it up to you on a platter. You know, like here's the answer you're looking for. We have the answer to everything within us.
Yeah, just like we were children. A child didn't need to know the intellectual understanding of how to play with a dog or a friend. They just did. Mm-hmm. You know, went to the playground. They lost themselves at the playground. They didn't really contemplate it. They just did. And then somewhere along the line, and it may be part of the design too. So it's very tough to knock like the whole thing, because when you look at even the talk about like the different facets of the physical world, you have the physical world, like the monetary aspects, money, the physical body, and everything else. And then you have another aspect that plays within the physical world, our emotions. And then on that level too, you have the intellect. All right. So where do they all fit in? And when you actually take a different perspective on them, you don't get rid of them. These are tools or conditions within the world in which it helps us to navigate through this physical world. But when you start from the basis of the understanding of energy, or the wisdom that we knew as kids, and you properly use the intellect, you properly use your emotion, and you properly use the physical manifestation. But the thing is, all of these outward things, such as the intellect, the emotions, and the physical world, is always fleeting. Because they're like, you know, we got into an area where people are trying to take medications, right? Like, I'm depressed. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, a lot of people are labeled depressed, and I'm like, years ago, it was just something you dealt with, right? Mm-hmm. And what it is they're trying to take a pill to get rid of that aspect of them. But there's something that you can learn in that, right? And I'm not here to knock medication. There's definitely balances or imbalances. It's a learning process from everything. I'm not saying there's only one way. But I think over time, we were trying to intellectually get ourselves out of pain or whatever it was. And I think it's part and parcel. Maybe even the way we were taught. We started as like infinite beings and playing in the playground, and we were friends with everyone until we told we couldn't be, and we were separated. You know, the boys and girls were starting to separate, and maybe this was part and parcel of the whole theme. To only come back to find it. It's kind of like, you know, think about this: when we're born here on this planet, another fractal of the understanding of the replication of the story. You were born. Where'd you come from? You came from home. And then you're shoved out into this world, into the cold world. And then you have to figure out how to survive, how to get along, how to love, all these things. And then to our demise, what we call death, which will happen, I don't care who you are as a physical being, you return home. And so so what are the themes? These themes carry out. So to say we did it wrong, I don't know. What I've learned, though, is when I understand the principles and I come from a different angle of it, life flows better. But life only flows better because I was stuck in the mud. If I wasn't stuck in the mud, would I realize I ran fast? You know, and you think you run fast until you see a jaguar or something. Mm-hmm. Oh shit, I'm slow as hell. Mm-hmm. You know, and so.
But I see what you mean. Unless you become stuck, unless you experience that, how do you experience that freedom?
Yeah, and I think we're starting to drop the understanding. You could still be in the intellectual understanding of these conversations, but we're starting to drop. Like, did we do it wrong, or we just know differently now? And we know differently now because what we did in the past. So I'm really hesitant to condemn the past. Obviously, there's things that we all agree with were horrific.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool because then we won't repeat those, at least consciously. Subconsciously, if we don't get out of it, we don't recognize it didn't work. When you consciously recognize it didn't work, you could change the subconscious, and you see less individuals on the planet doing harm, but there's still some doing it, right? But years ago, you go into the 19th century, you had 3 major leaders in the world that were doing major harm. You had Hitler, you had Stalin, and you had Mao. And they were all roughly within the same period of time, and these are they weren't like, you hear about these dictators in like these third world countries. We're talking about this is Europe and China.
Mm-hmm. Major players.
Yeah, major players. And you don't see, so you see more benevolence. You see a lot of bullshit too, but
Mm-hmm.
you see a lot of benevolence when you see different leaders. At least they're trying to be benevolent or pretending to be benevolent. We can pick up on that. But I think as individuals, we really want to go within and look at this stuff. We actually can change it. It doesn't matter who the dictator is or who the government is. We actually individually can go within and start to perceive it differently and have a different outcome, because we know, we've always said in this country, our government is an exact representation of the whole embodiment in which stands with the government. So
which is true.
We actually create the government, So if we don't like it, like, what do we have to do? We can yell at each other and like, hey, if something goes wrong, say if something goes wrong on this podcast, I could blame Mike and he could blame me, but that's not going to fix the issue on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, nothing ever goes wrong on this podcast.
But that's the truth. That's where we're at right now in politics.
It is, but we're starting to break away from it because it's been building up till now. And right now, where people are viewing politics and they realize they all have a point and they're all full of shit at the same time. I'm like, okay, that's a good start point. But when I see somebody's full of shit, what do I see in myself that's wrong? Because I can only acknowledge that if I have a bit of that. And it might not be an aspect of personality trait that I utilize, but I can only recognize that in which I know, right? Like we talked about that earlier, like I can't imagine something I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that always brings me back to the place, like people like, I wish I had this thing. I'm like, well, to some level you've had it or you had the experience of it. Like, what do you mean? Well, you can't imagine something you've never had the experience of or were introduced to, because it simply wouldn't come into your privy. It might be through somebody else's experience, but at some level you were a second-rate experiencer in that. So, like a lot of people all want to be millionaires. Why? Because of The Rich and Famous came out. What was it, in the 80s and 90s? Robin Leach. And so he brought us into the world of what wealth was. Otherwise we were just kind of on the preview of it, like out on the edge of it where you saw it in the news. But he brought you into their houses and talked to them, and all of a sudden like, wow, I didn't know you can have that. And everyone's like, I want that, and all of a sudden people started getting that,
Well, that's how it works.
It does.
And Louise Hay talks about this.
Yeah.
It's becoming aware of all the different infinite possibilities around us.
Yeah.
And that's something that she talks about often, is just the infinite ways that anything can come into our being. See, where we all go wrong is we think that because something happened a certain way for someone outside of us, that's the only way that can happen for me. And that's where we go wrong, is we say, in order to become a millionaire, I got to do these 10 things. Or in order to become the best teacher in the world, I got to do these 10 things. We see that outside of us and say, oh, that's the only way. And there is infinite number of ways that those things can kind of come to light or work out for us. But we trip ourselves up in the process going, wait, this isn't working. This isn't the way I'm supposed to be going. And it's like, who are we to judge that situation and say, oh, this isn't how it should be happening. This isn't how it should be unfolding. And we kind of trip ourselves up and get in front of ourselves. And we stop ourselves from experiencing all of our goals, all of our fantasies, all of our desires. They're all out there.
Yeah, but even equally just as bad as you actually achieve those things in that facet.
Yeah.
So if you did all the things, you did that, you did the grinding, and you all of a sudden became a very wealthy individual, that could be just as tragic, because what Louise Hay is talking about is fulfillment. When you start from the aspect of fulfillment, in the place of fulfillment where there is no formula in the mathematical outward science world, or you can say it's quantum physics, but even quantum physics is a very interesting concept in the language. But fulfillment into something, like, why do you like that? Like, there's no measurement. I can't explain it. You know, I was born this way. I could tell you a story around it. But yet, if I did this, this, and this, if I planted a seed in the ground and put enough water and followed the instructions, a apple tree would grow. But what was the fulfillment? What was the purpose of the apple tree? Why did you want to do it? Well, that you can't really nail down to an explanation. But when you start from fulfillment, the doing in the physical world becomes enjoyable. So then all of a sudden it's no longer about how many apples or the apples. It was a process in which I created the apple orchard. And that's where Louise Hay comes in and starts talking about the fulfillment of it. Yes, the money, all the apples will come, but you know, the person who runs the apple orchard, like I was telling Mike earlier, they don't sit around eating apples all day. Chances are they're probably eating an orange. But hey, if your fulfillment in life is to make yourself feel better and help out the world in whatever way you deem that way, and due to that, you amass a lot of money, what's going to happen is naturally you give it away. If you amass a lot of knowledge about stuff, you're going to do what? You're going to give it away. Kind of like what we do on this podcast. Me and Mike are actually learning as we're speaking right now. We claim to not know anything, but just kind of like, okay, let's just play around with this. And it's kind of how we came with the podcast. Let's sit and have a dialogue, discussion, and we'll put it around. Say, today it's like Louise Hay.
Well, the moment we say we know something, we've limited ourselves, and that's what I've truly realized. The moment we say, I know this, and this is what it's like, we have put ourselves in a box, the box we don't want to be in, which is, you know. Yeah. That's what that's how I.
Well, if you ever hear somebody like.
That's why I say, I don't know.
Yeah. Like, you just say, this is what I know thus far. I don't know what's coming. But when someone claims, I've seen this before in interviews or conversations, when someone's trying to get the upper hand, they're talking about something like, this I do know. And it's to kind of let the person know you have no ability to inject any information, because I am an expert in this place, and so your injection, trust me, I know. But the second they say, I know, all of a sudden, even that person that diligently studies that subject, whether it's psychology, science, or whatever it is, doesn't matter, will soon find something new a week later. And it won't necessarily negate what they did. It might expand upon. But you don't know, because if you do know, there's nothing left to talk about. Mm-hmm. And we know that's, you know, I would have nothing to do. I'd be staring at a wall all day if I had nothing to talk about. I'd go mad.
But seriously, yeah. You know, it's this weird idea that, like, and I feel like this is why, like, the new age stuff, or not the new age stuff, like the culture that we live in today is breaking down in certain areas. My whole life, people like adults, you know, as I was growing up, I felt like, okay, I just need to get older, then I'll understand. And I remember thinking that as a very young kid, getting older. And then as I was getting older, I realized that no one knew what they were talking about. Like, I watched teachers, I watched police officers, I watched our political leaders, and I'm like, they don't know. And they're up there saying that they know. And I knew this internally, and I felt this. I'm like, you know, that's kind of bullshit. That's not true. You don't know that. Or like my DARE officer speaking at my school, telling me that, you know, drugs are bad. Well, how do you know? You've never done them.
Well, yeah.
And I know that's a weird example, but I mean, I remember thinking that in my head going, I'm not going to listen to this dude to tell me what's good or acceptable or bad. Yeah. I need to find out for myself. And you can take this for anything. I just remember at a very early age looking at people going, you don't know. Why do you think you know that?
Well, because what it is, any narrative can be taken from either side. Like, so you see in history people that took drugs and gained immense knowledge, and then there are people who took drugs that ended up killing people or killing themselves. So if, it depends what narrative you take. So the people that took they're coming from that fear-based narrative. And, so I get it. I'm not here to knock that either. But,
I just remember my whole life growing
Yeah.
up going, why does everybody pretend they know what's going on when they don't?
yeah.
Like even our economists and people talking right now about the stock market. Well, historically speaking, so this must happen. Well, we don't know that. And then on the flip side, when all these articles pour out about the market crashing and seeing it go down, well, we all know it goes back up, right? We've seen this for how long? I mean,
Yeah.
my whole life, so at least the last 33 years. So I'm sitting there going, why are we freaking out about the stock market going down? We know it goes back up. But yet, anytime it goes down, there's panic, there's fear. It's because of these reasons. And it's like, wait. We know it's going to go back up. Oh, do we? Like, it's very odd.
No, well, but what it is whenever you choose a single narrative, because the truth is, when Dare came out, let's use that as an example, there is harm, but then there's good. But if you only present the harm, it's going to scare the shit out of people. If you only present the good, it could be dangerous as well.
Or abused, yeah.
Yeah, so it could be abused. So in the world of we live in, the only thing that remains steady that's never changed is the balancing point of life. So what goes up must come down. Now the question is, why are we taking the narrative when the market's down? Why is that bad? So anyone that does really good in the stock market today doesn't give a shit whether it goes up or down. They just do different things when it's up and down.
Correct.
And the cycles always change. So what I did, in 08 compared to what's happening now, I'm going to respond to it, but I'm going to go into it. But the actions I take will definitely be different than what happened in 08 compared to in 2022. But yet, because I've been in markets going up and down, I'm like, yeah, it's going down. Who cares? All right. So now I have to come from a different narrative, different focus, but I'm prepared. That's it. And this is where we come from the idea of fulfillment.
But these are concepts we don't talk about. We don't talk about these in school. We don't talk about, hey, guys, look,
No.
Life very much so is the stance you take. There is a number of different possibilities about how things can unfold. Why would we want to participate or add energy into something that does not serve you?
Yeah.
If we have science backing this up, showing us how we think about a situation, how we talk about a certain situation affects the physical outcome of the situation. This has been proven in multiple different studies, double slit experiment, all that type of stuff. So we know that. Why are we not taught that?
Well,
We're actually taught rudimentary, very very basic concepts that often keep us stuck. And so I just think that's kind of one of those things that once you see it, you begin to kind of let go of all these old ideas that we've created, in our daily lives.
Yeah, I believe we're at the time where we're actually hey, I was invited before COVID. I was invited to a high school once a month. Actually, I would show up every Monday for individual, but once a month there was 3 classes that would come by in front of me. Mm-hmm. And I would, all I did was write a book. I didn't have a PhD in anything. I just wrote a book on, Enjoy the Ride. It was kind of my experience I was going through, and at the time I was writing the book. That got me in the door to sit in a high school and talk about it. So we're at the time right now, but why it's not here just yet? Because people like you and I, the other people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, Louise Hay, she's passed, but people alive. It's like we're coming to an understanding. How do we create a curriculum that could be teachable? Like, so they do individual stuff. You go to them. You go to like a Dr. Joe Dispenza or Tony Robbins. You go to those places. I think eventually they're all going to come together and create a basis curriculum to be in the school. But right now it's not ready because we haven't come together yet. And when I say we haven't, from the fulfillment part, it's a very tricky thing because we don't want to go in and start teaching religion, and this could be looked at as religion. We don't want to do that. But I think when science and quantum physics is involved, and even though quantum physics was coined, the phrase was coined like in 1925, we're still coming to an understanding. What the hell is it, right? What the bleep we know came out in 07, something like that. And even that, it's like you watch that, and I think about that more. I was like, wow. And then even one of the figureheads that won it was Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's even come a long way of understanding that, even from the moment in which he did when he was talking about it, and he was an expert in the moment.
Absolutely.
So I believe it's right around the corner, because what it always happens, it takes a generation of a new wave of people that are in the administration to change it. And that's how it happens. You can't force us to jam it down the throat, because then all of a sudden it's all lost. If I told you had to look at your perspectives differently, you're not listening. It has nothing to do with the information. It has to do with the delivery system of the information. Because I believe so many people are delivering it brilliantly. And if you could look beyond their tone, also I'm like, oh, what they're saying is brilliant. But I don't like that tone. So people don't like a certain president because of his tone. And I'm not just talking about now, but throughout history. I didn't like their tone. I didn't like I liked the way they acted, But yet, what did they do? What did they say? Well, it just seemed like a nice person. These are very obscure way of thinking about life. But we could start looking at the essence of what's going on, and we get down to it. I believe we will be teaching this. I'm learning it now. You're learning it now. Not waiting for the schools to teach it. We can do it now,
Well, it is coming out more and more. And I was just over at my sister's last night having dinner with my family, and I remember her kind of talking about this she was mentioning that these new books for her children. She's got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and she was explaining, she was like, all of the science that's coming out right now, very much focuses on thought-based and coming from a place like a calm, centered place, not reactive. And I remember when she brought this up, I was like, this is great to hear, because what you're talking about, it is an approach that would benefit, children throughout their lives. Because when I grew up, we were taught this is the way things are. Like, that's what I was told. I was like, this is what you do. You go to school, you get a job. After your job, you start a family, and then, that's life. Where now we're starting to take a different approach with how we raise kids and how we teach kids about their emotions, their feelings, mental health, all these different aspects were things that are now coming into light that never were. And our ability to change the narrative ourself. And that's what was so powerful about what my sister was saying, is that each one of us has the ability, to steer the ship, if you will, And I thought that was great, because the more we see that coming out in this new, these concepts that she's deeming new, when she was talking about, the new science, this is stuff Louise Hay was talking about in 1984.
Yeah, and why, outside of the schools, and because they have to break through this narrative when it comes into the curriculum of schools, because you're dealing with, a parent sending a child off to school and giving their trust in the teacher teaching it. So a lot of times when they started doing this emotional thing, it's very interesting. I remember going into school and they brought this up to me. I wasn't really going in to talk about this. How do we stop bullying? And I'm like, well, define bullying. It's like someone who picks and creates a victim. And I'm like, well, no, the bully themselves was a victim. So you're dealing with two victims, all right? So the only way I know to help with that is take the person who's deeming to be the victim, which are both the kids, and then ask the one kid's like, I don't like what he said. Well, why don't you like what he said? Because it was hurtful. Why was it hurtful? And we're starting to teach kids that words hurt. So if words hurt, and we can't deal with them, now I have to get you to shut up. And that will never work. That sets another barrier, another instance. Now all of a sudden the people that are oriented to feelings are getting the upper hand, so they'll become the fascist.
And this is what we've seen in the last 10 years or 5 years.
We're starting to see that. So there's a balance point, because you got to understand, in the bully victim mentality, there is no hero, there's no winner. They're both, they're both victims. The bully is just the most dangerous thing we can do is take someone that has a victim mentality and empower them. That makes the most horrific bully.
That's what we're doing right
So
now
how do
with
we
justified grievances.
Yeah. So how do we take somebody and actually teach them that, you know, if someone says something to me, and it's a very tricky thing because, you know, we taught it, you know, a parent's, hey, you listen to me when I talk to you, you know, all that type of stuff. And even as nice they say, you're actually creating the double standard in which the kids have to work through in their life. Again, the world is that way. So it's not that we're doing anything wrong. We just have to be we have to take both sides. If you don't present both sides, you got nothing. All right? Half of the left side of the boat, if you cut it down the middle, the right side, it'll sink. I don't give a shit what side you're on, it'll sink. You need the entire boat, the left, the right, the bow, the stern. If you get rid of any of that, which people, they're trying to get rid of stuff, you can't. Let's explain it. Let's come from the narrative to where the basis of what is a boat. A boat in itself is one contained thing. Yes, there is a bow, there is a stern, there's a right and a left side. There's just like a human body has, you know, 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 eyes and 2 nostrils and all these things, but you wouldn't put them against each other. It's the balancing point in which it happens. So there's a new narrative, and people like Louise Hay and the work she's done is bringing this out in a very way that if you're a conservative or a liberal, you would like her. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is when we try to push something new into school, people get really agitated, and I understand because they're forcing stuff down. So it will come more subtle. The cool thing is whether it's in school or not, it's available to any human being that wants to do it at the point.
And that's it.
Yeah.
You know, more and more we become aware of these concepts, and the more and more we experience them. And then, you know, we run into different people who are also sharing similar experiences, and we grow from each other.
Yeah. Because I remember reading stuff years ago, and I was this type of person. I would go up to people, you need to be doing it this way. Mm-hmm. And I realized that was wrong. I'm like I don't, it was like I was coming at it from the wrong approach. I was like, now I'm the righteous one. Mm-hmm. And
that's where
it's
all
dangerous.
Religion is. Like, dude, I grew up a Catholic, and that's shit. I walk into church, and these people think they're the holiest people in the world because they go to church on Sunday.
Yeah, and
meanwhile, they leave church, and they're just like these judgment-filled basket cases.
Yeah, but maybe their person that is sitting in the pew is the holiest person, but they don't talk about it. They just are. You know, it's. You know, so to say someone that goes to church isn't, you know, to take everyone that goes to church is a hypocrite is a false assumption as well.
Absolutely.
And so we have to be very careful about that. And that's why we come back to more individualism rather than pointing a finger at a whole generation or a whole selective group. I'm like, I don't feel good about that because that creates every ism known to man. But if we actually just individually, like if I get like, oh, I don't like this person, like, why don't you like about him? I heard someone say something about this. Like, did you get to know the person? No. But I heard somebody say that, and the person that said they don't like him, I trust them. I'm like, okay, they might be right, they might be wrong, but until we go individually into everything, and check this out, I don't have enough time to individually go into anything, so I usually focus on the things that will uplift me. So all these other things may or may not be, and I'm not sticking my head in the sand. I'm moving in a direction in which fulfills my life. Everything else in my life, I always have situations or problems, however you want to call them. Like, I don't care about the play of words. But if I'm looking at the windshield of my life, looking in the direction in which I'm moving, the solution is right there. Yeah, there's a problem. There's a pothole in the road. That's a problem. But if I'm looking at the windshield, I can go either left or right to it, and all of a sudden the problem resolved. But if I'm looking in the rear mirror and I hit it, now the problem deepens. Now I got to change the tire, and still, I can resolve the problem there. I have a spare in the back, AAA, whatever the hell it is you want. But people are trying to they'll stop and say, why is there a hole in the road? I need to get my congressperson on this. And they sit there and they don't continue moving to the destination which they wanted, and they're waiting for someone to fulfill the hole. And I'm like, just go around it. Mm-hmm. You know, and eventually somebody will come. That's their job. It will be fixed. So the next time you're on that road heading in that direction, they'll be gone. Mm-hmm. But you know, or make a phone call as you're driving by it. Whatever it is you want to do. Do the best you can to do it. But continue on moving, because now all of a sudden you're stopping, and you're creating traffic. Now you're creating everyone else from going there because you can't stop. Roadblock. There's a hole. Everyone's like, well, I can go around the hole. No, you can't do that.
But that same person that reported that hole, as soon as that hole gets filled, next week they realize, that intersection now needs a stop sign because it's dangerous. You see what I mean? It continues.
Yeah,
and that's if we don't get a hold of the mind, then we think it starts to run wild with us.
Yeah, but that too. But also too, like when there is something wrong, like listen, it is a lot easier to live in a life in the world today than ever been before. And because we're out of this, we're literally out of the place where there's still some people living in what we call survival mode. But there's everything taken care of you right now. So now it's like, okay, what are you bitching about now? Nothing. Let's get into the creative mode now. Let's move beyond the point in which the next evolution of humanity, and I'm not saying we should have been there quicker or sooner. We're here now. But a lot of the technology of information coming at me. So information isn't a problem. I have it at my fingertips. It's what do I do with it? But if I have fulfillment in my life, I have something to look forward to that goes way beyond my needs. My needs are survival. But if I go beyond my needs, all of a sudden fulfillment kicks in. And it's the greatest feeling known to humanity because children never had needs. They were just fulfilled. Their needs were always met. They weren't like, oh shit, like what's the matter? Like before we get on the swing side, I gotta make sure I get food for today. Hey, no, like I remember just, if I was hungry, I found change. I found money. I found enough stuff to get it. I didn't walk around all day worried about that. I showed up at the pizza parlor. Here's my 75 cents. I got a slice. Mm-hmm. All right. But also like, I can't do this. I gotta find 75 cents now. Now you're not on the playground. So now what fun is having food or pizza by yourself because your friends that were on the playground have already eaten?
Yep.
They're gone. So the fulfillment, and, she talks about this. Actually, when I listen to Louise Hay, I've been studying it for a while, and but recently because me and Mike are talking about her, when you start like 5-10 minutes of driving the car, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, shit, I feel good.
Oh, she does have that feeling.
Yeah,
she
like,
absolutely has that feeling.
And she's like the queen of affirmations.
Oh, yeah.
She really is. And
oh, yeah.
And it works. And if we learn to affirm within us kind of what she's teaching, all of a sudden, there's going to be situations, problems. I don't care what you call it. I'm not like playing around, there's nothing wrong with the problem. There's nothing wrong with the situation. I don't care what you call it. But there's a solution to it, Every quarter has a heads and a tail. And if you're looking at the heads, the tail is the solution.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's just a freaking quarter. It's still worth 25 cents whether you're looking at the head or the tail. That's how I look at it,
Let's dive into her.
Let's check it out. All right.
Remember, each person has come to this planet to learn a lesson. You have your lessons, I have my lessons, you have your lessons. They're all different. We cannot learn the other person's lessons. We are not here to change other people. We are here to change ourselves. That is what we've come to the planet for, to change ourselves. If we try to do it for someone else, or learn their lesson, or make it nice, they don't get to learn it. And even if we fix it, isn't it amazing how they turn around and recreate it again? And we all know people like that. We've paid their rent, or we've gotten them out of some mess, or we've done this for them or that for them. And 2 months later, they're in the same problem because it's their pattern. It has nothing to do. Teaching them how to get out of it, it is much better if they're willing to learn. So it's like, the student must come to the teacher. And when the student is ready, the teacher is there, always.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, I didn't know I know you're going to play that one, but that's exactly what we're talking about. So it's taking on, so now, and if school does this, get into the learning of it, it's teaching self-responsibility, the ability to respond. And there are instructions to it. There are, like she's a teacher, right? The cool thing is, and I think this is why, like in public school, we talk about it. There's a law that states every child below a certain age must go to school or they become truant. So there's a law. No one's forcing me to listen to Louise Hay. No one's forcing me to go to like a Tony Robbins or a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat. No one's forced me to do that. There seems to be something beautiful in that. And guess what? No one's forced me to go to college. But I must go from K to 12th grade, or else I can consider true. And I could probably drop out before 12, get my GED if I want. So that always seems like a very sticky place to kind of insert these type of things. Yes, it would be brilliant. But if we had a society that was like that, we wouldn't have a law saying you have to go to school. The kids would be like, I fucking want to go to school.
Exactly.
Pardon the language.
They would, though.
They would love to go to school, but because we force it, it's a very weird thing. And I'm not here to upheave it and tell us we shouldn't do that. I'm not against anything. I'm just looking in the direction, how do we create this? But, hey, I went through it, and I'm actually having a great time in my life. And it's not in spite of, I think it's part of it. Like, again, I was in the mud, kicking around, kind of like the Zen teaching. And one day you wake up, I'm like, oh my God, they got me.
And that's what she's saying,
me.
Frank.
Yeah.
Like, that's what she's saying is exactly that, which is, hey, look, we all came here.
Yeah.
This place that we call Earth, all of this, it is a school. We have come here to learn about ourselves. It doesn't matter the details of going to school and how we get there and the friends we make and the trials and tribulations that we have as we grow as an individual. We just need to know that we're here to learn about ourselves. And to learn about ourselves and this reality that we call, real, this experience that we call real. And so when we come here, we're here to learn about our higher self, our soul, what's out there, for us to learn. And so when I hear Louise Hay talk about this, it makes it forefront. And no longer are things bad or good or right doing and wrong doing. It's like everything is here for me to learn about myself. Yeah. And that takes away these have to do's, can't do's, and all that type of feeling. And it's a more natural flow. And that's one of my favorite things about Louise Hay is the fact that she points out, like, hey, everything you're going through, everything right now is solely or is strictly to teach you about who you are and what you need to let go of.
Yeah. And some of my greatest lessons from a child, like even in school, beyond the point where you started becoming into these concepts and letting go or losing the idea of just complete bliss and doing stuff, was when I was pushed up against something such as a test or what have you. And in the interim of studying for the tests and say, like, for me, school wasn't really my strong suit in the intellectual understanding of it. I was very physical, so sports really played well for me. But even like, so when I would get to a place where I take a test and I really grind it out and I passed, that was my fulfillment. Like in these moments, so it was like I was told I wasn't good at it, but yet I went beyond the point and I did something. There was some satisfaction in it. And so there is something to that. But maybe it was because I was told I wasn't smart enough, but in a moment's time I suspended that. I forgot about it, and I proved that to be wrong, and then later on fell back into it. And even same thing went with sports. I was always told I was good, but then there were moments like, holy shit, I am not, because you reach into other levels. You can't remain the same.
Again, the world teaching you about yourself.
Yeah, so like, if I'm, I was doing things running fast, and I was faster than most kids, and type of thing like that. It was a false sense of empowerment. It really was. When I fell and tripped, and someone ran faster than me, and then I came up and got from that, that was a real sense of empowerment. It wasn't. It's how do I deal with that? Because me being able to run fast to anyone was a full sense of empowerment over others. That was just ridiculous. I didn't learn shit from that. I don't know why the traits I was able to do this. And I'm just talking, metaphorics and stuff like that. I'm not saying I was faster than everybody, but I would have a lot of things like that happen to me. There was nothing there. There was that moment of people like, oh, good job. But it was when I was in the dark. It was when I was deep in it. And I'm like, this is not working. And I found a way, and I found the little light, and I just moved towards the light, and all of a sudden the entrance of the tunnel opened up. That was the true fulfillment. That was the amazing part. So if we're trying to get rid of all the what we call bad things in life, there's nothing to learn. Because, hey, coming to this earth is very painful.
And we see that all the time with like families that have money and stuff like that, or they call them like helicopter parents or something. I forgot the term, but like you're always trying to hover over to make sure that they don't go in through anything wrong. They don't experience anything that shocks them or, puts them in an uncomfortable position. We can do that all we want, but the universe will fully provide situations to this individual that are going to stretch them and going to try them. And so rather to try to prevent bad thing or quote unquote bad things or hard experiences and things like that, we need to explain what they're here for and what we're here for. And what we're here for is to learn more about ourselves. We're not here to become rich and famous. As much as the Western culture wants to teach us, that's why we're here. We're here to work. We're here to make money. We're not. We are here to learn about ourselves. And so how do we learn about ourselves is we allow our life to unfold. We allow ourselves to go towards the things that are that we're attracted to, our dreams, our goals, and figure out, that the pathway to success is never straight and narrow.
No. And because you want straight and narrow, this is where the difficulty comes.
Yeah, because we're saying this ought to be not the way it is, rather than accepting everything as it is. Once we learn to accept the situation as it is, that's true growth.
Yeah, if you understand it's going to be uncomfortable, you'll do it. But if you think it ought not to be uncomfortable, you're looking for every painkiller, everything like that. And then what happens is like, I don't want to take a painkiller, so I'm just not going to go through the uncomfortableness. There is nothing more uncomfortable than staying in the comfort. Like, you get up and you run a mile, you run 2 miles, you run a marathon, all right? And everyone knows the couch, if you sit on the couch from the distance and when you ran a marathon, that could be even a lot more uncomfortable than running their marathon. I know that to be a fact. How long can one sit on the couch before they just lose themselves?
And we all know this. We all want to just wake up and relax and go sit on the couch. But we've also have all been there where
but why
it's
do
like,
you want to do that?
I don't want to be on the couch anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I got to get up. This is killing me. So too much of anything we all know is not what we want.
Hence the balance point.
We all know that.
Yeah, like, because, hey, the trick of sitting on the couch is knowing when to get up. Some days I'm like, shit, I got up, and some days, I just like, the hell with it. I'm getting rid of the couch. It's like getting rid of the couch. And, but, getting rid of the couch doesn't help. And again, it's a game you have to play.
But that's what we're doing in life. We're trying to get rid of anything that we don't think. We need to get rid of drugs. We need to get rid of pain. We need to get rid of hate. We can't get rid of these things.
You can't get rid of anything.
Yeah.
You can make laws that...
we're trying to regulate and make outlaw everything that,
It doesn't matter. You can outlaw... You can outlaw murder. Oh, shit, they did. But the choice of murder is still available.
Yep.
Because people do it all day long. Why are we choosing... Why is a choice of murder on our plates right now in humanity? This is what we have to look at. Can we get beyond it? And the answer is yes. But we also have to look at the state of which we're in and not neglect, because, a lot of people ask this question, if someone had a gun to your child's head, would you murder that person doing it? And then when as a child, unless, they're beyond that point, which I don't know, it's a very difficult question to even answer because it's not happening. I don't believe in these games, but you do that. So once someone says, well, I would take them out, well, now it's like, okay, here is where the problem begins, because everyone has a justified grievance of murder, But how, so we can't, like, people are trying to fix this in society. I'm like, your job didn't come here to fix the world. How do I apply myself in the world? And I believe if we all did this and we're doing it more, less grievances would be had in the outside world. Because if I learn not to take offense to this person, they're no longer a pain in the ass. But because I don't like what they're saying, I have to go against them. And guess what? If they're an antagonist, they're going to say it more. Like, hey, watch when I say this, Frankie goes crazy. And I go crazy, and they're playing with me. But if I stop going crazy, they would stop saying it. That's an inside job, all right? But there's probably always going to be something that somebody says, I'm like, freaking, all right, I got to breathe. I got to remember, this is my shit, not theirs, you know? And that's what I'm working for. So at some level, I'm thankful they're out there, but sometimes they just show up at the weirdest
I
time.
want to point something out about that example, too, because, like, a lot of people think that it's okay to have a reaction like that and that it's the other person's fault. That person knew what they were doing. They were goading me. They were trying to get me pissed off. I don't give a flying I don't give two shits that person was trying to piss you off. You take control for your own actions, your own emotions, your feelings. And this is where we kind of have lost it a little bit with everything that's going on right now, is you're right. You should feel that way. No, that's keeping them trapped in pain, trapped as a victim, trapped in this outside of me, matters. No. The moment you get pissed off at that person, you've given your power away. Yeah. It's the moment you have let yourself down. And until we really teach that, we're going to run around with all these people thinking, or allowing people to think that, or not allowing people to think. I guess the best way to say it, we're going to have a lot of people who are going to be very upset because they won't ever be able to get out of this mental mind pattern, because it isn't until we take full control of our own feelings, emotions, mental state, physical state, all of that we're in control. Nothing outside of me has the ability to make me feel or act a certain way unless I allow it to. And that's true growth.
And when we finally get to the essence of that, there would be no obnoxiousness outside of us, because whether we want to believe this or not, there is no real true victim. But no one would choose for all these grievances and bad things happen to them. But I vibrationally, frequency placed myself there to get yelled at. And maybe it was because my subconscious needed to uplift this thing. And cause, years ago when someone said something bad to me, I lashed back. I didn't see that my response is a problem. If they didn't say that, I'd be fine. Why are you upset? Well, because of what they did. And the world seemed to favor it until it was like a week or two later, dude, shut up about this already, So we already knew something was wrong. But now I'm at a point where someone will say something and I get irked about it. Mm-hmm. Well, the truth is weirdly enough, I was probably starting this little thing. It started earlier that day or earlier that week, and it built up. And, of course, it got to the point where I outwardly respond, because it slowly crept in. So I vibrationally was the exact moment in time to create the scenario, just like an actor stepping onto stage. This is what they're doing. Now, when I become self-aware of it, I'm like, oh, my God, all right, stop it, slow it down. I was allowing this to build up, and I created this situation unconsciously. I wouldn't choose it. I didn't do that. But it's when we become more skillful in identifying where we are vibrationally, emotionally, we can avoid the dark alley. You can. Everyone can avoid the dark alley by not walking down the alley in the dark. But it's so subtle because it's our subconscious. So Louise Hay is one of the brilliant people doing all these affirmations, which actually reprograms the subconscious to where you wouldn't even think about even walking anywhere near an alley. And that's kind of what we're getting at. So if you're walking down a dark alley, you were actually the one who walked down the dark alley. Yes, the mugger didn't have the right to mug you, or whatever happened in the dark alley. The other person didn't have the right to do it. That being said, why were you in the alley? And this is where we come to understanding, the deeper we get into this, what frequency am I setting out for all these situations that happen to me? I stepped onto the stage and where this happened. When you step onto the battlefield, you better take cover. Yeah.
Let's go into the next one.
Every single thought we have or every sentence we speak is an affirmation. And it's either positive or negative. And it's going out from us and it's creating our experiences. However, when we talk about doing affirmations, what we're talking about is making definite positive statements to create something in our life or to remove something in our life. You see, if you stand there and say, I don't want this job, or I don't want this relationship, or I don't want these hips, or I don't want whatever, that does not get you what you want. That's what I call fighting the negative. And it doesn't do anything but keep what you have that you say you don't want. However, if you start saying and doing affirmations that I have a wonderful new job, or I have this most absolutely marvelous relationship, then you're beginning to create what it is you do want. Affirmations are like planting seeds. And if you think for a moment, when you put a seed in the ground, you do not get instant tomato plant or instant strawberries or instant oak tree. That seed goes in the ground and it has to germinate. That's the first thing, which means it breaks open its little shell and little roots begin to go down. And it gets nourishment from the earth. And only then does the first little shoot come up through the ground. Now, when we're doing affirmations, too often people say, well, that isn't $1 million, and they stomp on that first little shoot. They don't give it a chance to grow. Doing affirmations is like planting a seed in the ground, and watering it is like repeating your affirmations. And you just keep doing them, and you keep doing them, and you keep doing them.
Brilliantly said. I love that analogy. I've heard other people use it. There's something about that's been used throughout time, but it really is poignant.
Well, the reason I love it is it's one of the seed example is one of the best that you can take, because truly, like, okay, look at these. How tall are those redwood trees that are in California?
They're tall.
Yeah, but I mean, like, are they like 100 feet? 50?
Oh, yeah, good, better than that.
Yeah, I mean, they're huge. And to think that something like that came from a seed, like this big. And imagine trying to walk up to somebody, 2,000 years ago and say, plant this, and it's going to give you apple trees. People would think that's witchcraft. This is ridiculous. Who is this person? A god? And it's like, no.
One sperm creates one human being.
Exactly. See,
holy shit!
Right?
You have to look at a microscope at that thing.
But it's crazy to see, and like that's just a perfect example of what we're doing every day.
Yeah.
Which is, hey, each thought that we think about, whether that we consider that negative or positive, we're contributing towards a certain feeling, and we have the ability to steer that feeling. Do we want to feel good? Well, I'm going to start and continue to feel good thoughts, right? And so we get kind of stuck in this weird world, or at least this is how I experienced it, which is I'm not allowed to feel good unless I already have what I want. And this is where we have been, why we stay on the merry-go-round, why we get stuck, and why we're experiencing so much suffering, is we don't allow ourselves to feel good unless we have it. And then once we have it, we realize that that's not what we're looking for, and that feeling that we had for maybe 2 days or a month of having it begins to fall away. So we say, oh, it must be something else that I want. And this cycle never ends. And when I saw this, 3.5, 4 years ago, it was like everything clicked. I went, I've been on that cycle my whole life. Yeah,
and know this. If you're expecting apples and want apples, you must plant an apple tree. So whatever thoughts I permeate early in my day and continues through my life, I will get that. So if you wake up in the morning and say, I hope my coworker doesn't drive me nuts, don't expect to be happy, because you just, like, in other words, you don't take an orange seed and put it in the ground and expect apples. Mm-hmm. It's understanding. So the farmer, doesn't have, what the hell, how did I get peaches? I'm like, you obviously grabbed the wrong batch of seeds, dude.
Yeah.
An acorn will produce a oak tree. I'm like, it's not going to create a ficus. So your thoughts are the seeds. And if you're just haphazardly grabbing into different barrels and wanting apples and peaches show up. Hey, if peaches show up, make some peach cobbler.
Yep.
That's how you turn it around. But get more specific next time. And every thought that we have, this is why there is no victims. I don't know how many apples are coming into the harvest of this fall, but I know there are going to be apples on those trees, not oranges. Mm-hmm. And that I have control of. I have control over what I'm planting out there, and then how many show up is the surprise in which I want. And that's the brilliance of it. So we understand that we are the conveyor or the architect of our life, or the farmer, or the orchard owner, or whatever you want to call it.
Or all of it.
Yeah, we're all of it. So just be careful what you think. It's not even what you say, it's what you think.
Because thinking generates the feeling.
Yeah, because I could say I love you, but I'm just saying that because there's attachment of a definition to, if I say I love you, there's something good and positive about it. But I've heard people say I love you, like, you get the hell out of here. Like, You know,
It happens all the time.
I'm energetically insulting you, but at the same time, I'm trying to keep not insulting you outright. So I'm saying I love you. You know, but the person knows like that's not how you say it
Because of the feeling.
Yeah, and then we'll argue over the definition of that, which is funny. I've been on that side.
And we'll argue over the definition.
Yeah.
That's totally how it works.
Carol always like, hey, I need you to take the garbage. Like I'll be doing it in a moment in which I'm planting the seed, so I can't. But I joke around. I'm like, I love you, honey. Why would you say that? I'm like, I just had to say I love you.
Frank. Always trying to keep it fresh.
Yeah, well, it's my way of saying I don't really want to take the garbage right now, but I love you. And she knows it.
That's
then
funny.
she forces me to tell her what I really meant by it, and I do.
Now tell me what you really meant.
Well, she's a teacher. She makes me sit down. Okay, explain to me. What happened?
We're going to analyze this.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, shit.
That's
Sorry,
awesome.
I'm sorry to say anything. Sorry. I'm sorry I shot the spitball at the chalkboard. Why did you do that? I'm like, I don't know. It's bored.
That's what this whole life is.
Yeah.
Us not knowing why we're here and then figuring it out. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
It's to learn about myself. It's to learn about what I am.
Yeah. I think Karen does that to me. Like, if I do something wrong, she makes me write on the chalkboard 1,000 times. I will not say I love you unless I mean it. I will not say I love you unless I mean it.
Hey, she knows what affirmations. She's like, yep.
Yeah.
Louise Hay gets it. I'm programming the shit out of Frank's subconscious mind.
Did that ever happen to you as a kid?
I have to write on the at school.
Yeah.
No, but I did have priests and I did have nuns. I did go to
Oh, my
Catholic school,
God.
but I never had to do it.
I
was too young, or
I had
that
to-
wasn't around during my time.
The chalkboard was
Yeah.
around, right?
Yeah, at that point we were writing on like whiteboards.
Oh, yeah, we had a chalkboard, and I remember
Yeah.
sitting there, and I had to say after class, and
You actually had to do that shit?
oh shit, yeah, like
See, that sucks.
like
See, I had
yeah,
detention and stuff.
Yeah, every year I had to do that.
Did I ever tell you what my detention was called at my
Well,
Catholic school?
You did. Remind me again. It's
Justice under God.
Justice
Jug.
under
We
God.
didn't have detention. We had jug. And this was in high school, and it was called Justice
I remember
under
you telling
God.
me that. That's just,
And we did have to write an essay. So we would come in, and like you would have to write it was minimum 1 page, and I think it was like front and back page, and it was on whatever topic.
Yeah.
And it was usually some religious topic, but rather than writing one sentence
I
on a
don't-
board,
like-
we had to write a
yeah,
page
the
in
chalkboard
detention,
for me
or
was
jug.
the chalkboard for me was in grade school. It wasn't in high school.
Okay, yeah.
They just beat the shit out of you in high school. You know?
Yeah, at that
So
point, they just,
they
like
smack
hit
you
and
upside the
stuff.
head. Yeah.
What the hell are you doing?
But yeah, in grade school, you sit there and you go on the chalkboard and
Yep.
write all this stuff down, which is funny because obviously the teacher's making a point because they had to wait till I had to write it, and they, because you're in grade school, so you do it at the end of class. There's no other class coming in. It's the end of the day because you're in the same classroom all day. And so I held them back by me having to write this on the board, and I was not good at spelling. It's like,
That's
shit.
so funny.
How do you spell that? Like, oh Jesus, And so my spelling became better because of my
Constant detention.
my inability to keep my mouth shut.
My spelling got great.
Yeah, it's like so so that's taking a negative and turning into a positive.
That's so funny. What clip did you pick for this week?
Oh, here we go. This is it here. All right.
Okay.
Here we go. Here's another Louise Hay.
Yes. So let's ask once more. How many people here have barriers? Okay. Yes. All right. I think almost all of us do. We do so much work on ourselves, and still somehow barriers keep coming up. And I find that many of them fall into about 4 different categories. They're either criticism, they're resentment, they're fear, or they're guilt. Those are the 4 ones we work on mostly, the ones that really are in the way. Yes, let's take a nice deep breath. And if you brought any stuff in with you, just let's let it go for the time being. I've been sort of my eyes going in many places, seeing what's happening. I'm letting all that go now so that I can just be here and concentrate on being with you. And we've come to let things go. We've come to let our barriers go. We want to find out something that's a little bit different that perhaps we didn't know before. Okay, each one of us has come here to let something go. And let's just know for ourselves that we're willing to release, we're willing to let go. And it doesn't have to be a struggle, and it doesn't have to be difficult. And we don't have to listen to old echoes of the past. because if we hear them, we'll just let them go. We're here to learn something new, and if each one of us gets just one sentence today that can help us improve the quality of our life, then that's magnificent. Can you think how wonderful it would be if every single day we got one sentence of something that would help us let go of the past or bring something new in? Because, you know, all we're really working on is our understanding and awareness and knowledge. And it's no good beating ourselves up for the stuff that we don't know or where we are. It's much better if we put that energy into learning what we can about ourselves and seeing what we need to dissolve. I think one of our big problems is that most of us haven't the faintest idea of what we want to let go of.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
We don't have the faintest idea of what we want to let go with.
And the principle here is like when you listen to her, what every teacher has done, and she does it greatly, is you bring you back to this neutral place called the present moment. Because, you know, like I've used this analogy before, if I was doing 100 miles an hour in a direction not warranted, like I was going in the wrong direction, pulling a U-turn isn't feasible. You'll die. If I'm doing 100 miles an hour, it's not going to end well. Mm-hmm. But if I learn to just presently take my foot off the gas, the car will naturally slow down. And eventually I could get into a neutral place where U-turn will be safe, so to speak. So a lot of times it's about knowing there's a neutral state and everything, because if you're revved up, you know, doing 100 miles an hour, you can't just turn that around quickly. You have to learn to slow the vehicle down, learn to slow the thought down, and by staying in the present moment, all of a sudden you let go of the gas pedal and the car starts to slow down. And then you get to a place where you're completely still, and when you're still, it's so much easier to choose the right seed, the right thought into heading out into the harvest of your life. But when you're, you know, running around and frantic, that's not the time. So understanding the skill of getting to a neutrality place is what, and that's kind of like these affirmations do. Brings you back to the present moment. And when we learn to do it for ourselves, because we are our guru, we are our teacher, all these other people are concepts of who we already are. They're inviting us into their process of their world, but they're doing it for themselves. Just like me and Mike are doing this podcast for ourselves. And we're just inviting you into watching the whole act of it. But you also have this quality as well. Everyone does. You don't necessarily need to be on a podcast or even be known in order to do this. When you do it for yourself, you find this is where the immense control is. When I could take it back to neutral, and in the neutral state, bless you.
Thank you.
In the neutral state, you will only choose what's preferential. You know?
I love that.
Yeah.
And this was a great clip because letting go is the hardest, easiest concept out there. And what I mean by that is it sounds so easy to let go of something, but it's honestly one of the trickiest things because we've been taught our whole life that, like,
bless you.
Excuse me.
He's letting go.
I know. I'm trying. We've been taught our whole lives that, you know, this is who you are and, you know, don't let others down and all this type of stuff. And so we create these complex mental narratives our whole lives about, you know, I can't fail because of this. And it's really in the letting go of something that we get control. And that's something I learned from Alan Watts. I've learned from all these teachers, you know, Louise Hay.
You learn from yourself.
Yeah.
You actually learned from yourself.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on with me.
It's called sneezing. It's called letting go.
Yeah, truly letting go.
There's pollens in the air probably. But yeah, like Alan Watts allowed you to teach yourself, if you will.
So did Louise Hay.
Yeah, so when you look at that, that's kind of what it is. It's like, what are they teaching us or just bringing our attention what we already know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
We are our own guru. There aren't gurus outside of us. You can use that. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, you're the one who is doing the work. Louise Hay can't do it for you. I can't do it for you. You have to do it. And she mentioned that earlier. You have to do it.
That was in I think the first clip we showed. That's why I chose that clip is a lot of us, we want to help others. And I remember when I started to learn these concepts, I wanted to tell everybody.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell my parents, my friends, my family members, and just be like, guys, look, this is the way. And it's like, it's so funny because that is the paradox of that was me, that was myself, like getting in front of myself and very excited about this situation. I'm not here to change anyone's path. I'm not here to show anybody the right path. I don't know what the right path is. And it wasn't until I allowed myself to, ease into these concepts that I truly began to understand them. And at least from an analytical mind, and then you have to let go of the analytical mind, and then you begin to experience them. And that's where the magic begins.
Yeah, because the path you're on is the right path, but we also know...
We can't not be on the right path.
Yeah, you can't. But we also understand, because if we're energy always, the only quality, well, not the only quality, but the main quality energy has is always moves in the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
So that we could come to know. And I think when we get aggravated, we understand at some level we're not moving it could be easier.
Yeah.
And that's the quality we have. So it's recognizing that. That's why when things go awry, we put into play these things, right? Like if there was an intersection where there's always cars crash into each other, you put up stop signs. That's the path of least resistance, right? It may cause a little more traffic, but hey, I'd rather have traffic than deaths, right? So there's something natural about that when you do that. Okay, but there's always going to be the refining of path of least resistance. It'll always be that way. We're never going to have just a complete straight line. But in the moving from A to C to get to B to then D, jumping back and forth, there is a process in which we learn that's in our subconscious, and that's why we're here. But just like when I do something like that was good, but I can do it quicker next time, or whatever way I can do, I can refine it more, and that's the brilliance of life. Like when we do a podcast, I'm like, I have an idea, a statement, and I say it. I'm like, okay, that was good. It felt good, but I think I could say it better or greater. And there always is that, but I don't defer, or I don't knock what I had said previous, because that would not, I wouldn't want to ever talk again. If I had to say it empirically perfect, I would never talk. Maybe.
No, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So there's always this refinement of life. It always is. But are you moving in a direction where refinement is elevating up, or is it stagnant, or is it going in the other direction? This much we do know. Human beings that are having problems can't get out of the way. You don't need to tell them. They know. They know. They might use the excuse, I'm no good, I'm not deserving. I'm like, okay, that empirically that's not true. You wouldn't be here if you were. But how did the individual get out of that? I'm like, go to that neutral state. In the neutral state, if you're holding on to something, what neutrality does in the physical world. So I had these weights I was holding, right? And someone told me I had the idea, if I let go of them, I fail. But when I'm in a neutral state, I can put them down. And when I'm ready, I can pick them up. So the neutral state allows me to alleviate the weight or the pressure from them. But I'm not throwing them out. And then you put them down for long enough, and you ask yourself, why the hell did I have them in the first place? So the neutral state is not getting rid of. Because when I'm in a neutral state, say I was heading east, 100 miles an hour, and I realize, hey, I want to go west. Where my destination is west, I'm going east. I slow down, I get to a neutral state, and I'm at the crossroads now. I still have the choice to go east. That's the positive point. It's not that east was taking away from me. It's now I'm consciously choosing west. So when I put the weights down, I still want them available. That's why the letting go and the movement is not good, because everyone's like, oh, if you're going west, let's get rid of east. I'm like, we don't need to do that. I need to be in a conscious state in order to choose. That's why you can't take choice away. But I want to be in a place where I can get to where I could still choose east and west. And if west is where I want to go, I choose it. And that's the brilliant part. So letting go is a temporary thing, and you may pick them up, but then you're like, why did I hold them? But you still have a choice to grab them. So when people tell let go, they don't realize you have the choice. They might be gone forever. Well, just put them down at the door. Come in. And if you still want them when you leave, they're right there. No one's going to take them from you. That's an easier concept to deal with in the human condition than is get rid of them. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to get rid of people's problems. Like, no, you don't get rid of problems. You dissolve them. You transform them. You transmute them.
Yeah.
So put the weight down at the door. Come sit down and let's discuss this. And when you at the end, you can pick them up if you want. or leave them. But we don't. A lot of times we get rid of that thing. You shouldn't be doing that. Like, this is why our body, we want the choice. And the neutrality place of the true neutrality place is still having the choice to fail. You know, I heard someone said that in this country we have the right to fail, and I'm like, yes, it makes it good. But we also have the right to not fail too. But
that's it.
Yeah.
I got one more clip for us.
You know, if you have a little child who has been allowed to stay up as late as it wishes for a long time, and then you make a decision that you now want this child to go to bed at 8 every night, what do you think the first night will be like? The child will rebel against this new rule and may kick and scream and do its best to stay out of bed. If you relent at this time, the child wins and will try to control you forever. However, if you calmly stick to your decision and firmly insist that this is the new bedtime, the rebelling will get less and less. In a few nights, the new routine will be established. It is the same with your mind. Of course it'll rebel at first. It does not want to be retrained. But you are in control. And if you stay focused and firm, in a very short time, the new way of thinking is established. And you will realize that you are not a helpless victim of your thoughts, but rather a master of your own mind.
Perfect.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those clips I heard from her that was so powerful, because that's where a lot of us get stuck, and when we can just remind ourselves that, this is just a mental game, a mental retraining. It takes the sting out of it, because at first, bad situation happens, we feel bad about it, we don't like it, it's sour, it doesn't feel good, so we want to push it away. But when we can retrain that experience, and how we experience, how we, our mental chatter or narrative or story that we put behind experience, when we know that we have the ability to change that, it makes life, you're now guiding life in the direction you want to go, rather than fighting against something that you thought you never had control of. We have control over everything.
Yeah, and I think, like, she makes a brilliant point here, and another thing to add to it is, whenever you're moving in a momentum, even if it's not working for you, humans, we like the feel of momentum. That's why, like, the person will just say to hell with it and keep heading east further than they thought. So there is a little bit of disturbance or uncomfortableness in slowing the vehicle down to turn around. So, like she was mentioned with the analogy of, like, if going to bed at a certain time or doing something is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because the momentum of the other thing that isn't working, that's why you want to change it. If it was working, you wouldn't even be here talking about it. But
Correct.
If it's not working, it's the momentum of that thing that's working is what you're addicted to. It's the movement. So we love movement, but we only like it when it's moving in a preferential way that's elevating us to a higher place than where we came from. So in the interim of that, turning around, coming to a complete stop, is rather uncomfortable. All right. So, but once we actually get used to the uncomfortableness, shifting our life and changing it periodically to continue moving in the path of least resistance is the principle of it. And that's what it is. So I know, like, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. It always is. But when I actually know that, it's not that uncomfortable anymore. I get over it quicker.
It is.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of takes the sting out of it.
Yeah. And if you understand that, you'll do it. But if you think it's supposed to be comfortable, like, obviously this isn't working, let me keep staying up later. But yet when you stay up later, what happens? You're late the next day, so you know that's not working. But if it's making me feel bad, it can't be working. I'm like, no, it is. It's momentum. It's G-force, so to speak. When the airplane's landing at the destination, you're going to feel it. But when it was, moving calmly at 500 miles an hour, 30,000 feet, you want to land the place in the direction or in the destination where you want to go. So you're going to feel the G-force. But now when I feel the G-force, I realize, oh, wow, there's change coming. And this is why we're here. We're getting ready to land.
You're aware of it.
You're aware of it. And so, yeah, discomfort will always be. But when you become friends with discomfort, all of a sudden something's gained. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining us this week. Very special guest with Louise Hay. Honestly, guys, there's a ton of information out there on her. Check out her publishing company, hayhouse.com. just look at the different people that she has worked with, the different authors that she's put out. She really is a pioneer, for this new thought type of movement. So give it a shot. Take a look at some of the stuff she has out there. Like Frank had mentioned, she's very heavily focused in affirmations. There's a lot of good content out there. So take a look. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And we'll see you guys again next week.
All right. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.
All right, bye.